The call came on a Wednesday, and I almost didn't answer. My sister Donna had been trying to reach me for 3 days, which was unusual enough that I set down my coffee and picked up. She lived 2 blocks from my house on Clifton Avenue, the pale blue 2-story with the black shutters and the rose bushes along the iron fence that I had planted the spring after my husband passed. She said she had driven by twice that week and noticed lights on in rooms that should have been dark, a pickup truck in the driveway that didn't belong to me, and voices carrying through the upstairs windows I always kept closed. I told her I would look into it. I was visiting my college roommate, Helen, in Asheville, had been there for 10 days, helping her recover from knee surgery, and no one was supposed to be in my house. No one had been given a key. No one had been invited. I thanked Donna, hung up, and sat very still for a moment at Helen's kitchen table while the morning light moved across the floor. My son Daniel had a copy of the spare key. I had given it to him 2 years ago when I had the water heater replaced and needed someone to let the plumber in while I was at a doctor's appointment. I had asked for it back. He had said he would drop it off. He never did. And I had let it go because he was my son, and I trusted him. The way you trust something so deeply that you stop thinking about it altogether. I packed my bag that afternoon, hugged Helen goodbye, and drove the 4 hours home. I turned onto Clifton Avenue just after 7 in the evening. The streetlights had come on, and the neighborhood looked the way it always did at that hour, quiet and familiar. The Hendersons' porch light glowing orange, the maple trees throwing long shadows across the sidewalk. But when my house came into view, I slowed the car and felt something cold move through my chest. The driveway held 2 vehicles I had never seen, a black pickup and a silver sedan with a cracked taillight. Through the front window, I could see the flicker of a television and the silhouette of someone moving in my kitchen and the light on in the upstairs hallway that I had specifically replaced with a dimmer switch because the brightness at night bothered me. Boxes were stacked on the front porch. Not boxes of things being taken out, boxes of things being brought in. I parked at the curb and sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. Then I got out of the car, walked up the front path, and knocked on my own door. My daughter-in-law, Rachel, opened it. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt and had her dark hair pulled back, and for one brief second, she looked startled. Then something settled over her expression, something practiced and flat, and she leaned against the doorframe with her arms crossed, as though she owned the threshold she was standing in. "Oh," she said, "you're back early." "I live here," I said. She didn't move. Behind her, I could see cardboard boxes open on my living room floor, their contents spilling onto the hardwood I had refinished. By hand, the summer Daniel started high school. A woman I didn't recognize was sitting on my sofa with a glass of wine. 2 children I had never met were running through the hallway in socked feet. "Daniel said you wouldn't mind," Rachel said. "We needed a place for a few weeks. His promotion fell through, and we're in between." "He didn't ask me," I said, "and I do mind. Who are these people?" "My sister and her kids. They drove in to help us get settled." She said it the way you say something obvious to someone slow. "It's only temporary." "Rachel," I said, keeping my voice level, "this is my home. You did not have permission to come here, and you certainly did not have permission to bring other people into my home without so much as a phone call. Where is Daniel?" "He's picking up dinner." She finally stepped back from the door, but not in a way that felt like an invitation, more like a tactical retreat. "Come in, I guess." I walked into my own house and stood in the doorway of my living room and looked at what had been done to it in 10 days. The armchair my husband had loved, the one with the faded green upholstery that I had refused to reupholster because it still smelled faintly like him if you pressed your face into the back cushion, had been pushed into the corner to make room for a portable crib. My writing desk had been shoved against the wall and covered with someone else's mail, phone chargers, a bag of chips, a stack of children's DVDs. The framed photographs on the mantel, mine and Walter's wedding picture, Daniel at 6 years old in his Little League uniform, my mother in her garden, had been replaced or pushed aside to make room for a cluster of candles that had dripped wax onto the shelf I had painted myself. Rachel's sister introduced herself from the sofa. She did not stand up. "Nice place," she said, looking around with the expression of someone measuring square footage. "Thank you," I said. "I built most of it myself." I went upstairs. The door to my bedroom was closed and I opened it. My closet had been emptied. My clothes were bundled on the bed in no particular order. Blouses mixed with sweaters, folded badly, or not at all. The closet rod now held Rachel's things. Her shoes were lined up along the baseboard where I kept my bedside table. I stood in the doorway for a long time. When Walter died 11 years ago, I had stood in this same doorway for a long time. That night I had been unable to go in because the bed still held the shape of him on his side and I wasn't ready to see it flat. This night was different. This night I felt something move from grief into something harder and quieter, the kind of cold clarity that comes when you understand you have been underestimated. I heard Daniel's car in the driveway. I went back downstairs. He came through the front door with 2 paper bags of takeout and stopped when he saw me. He was 34 years old and he had my husband's eyes, and for a moment, just for a moment, I let myself feel the ache of that before I set it aside. "Mom," he said, "your wife moved her family into my home without asking me," I said. "Your clothes are in my closet and mine are piled on the bed. I want an explanation." He set the bags down on the floor. Rachel appeared in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed again. Daniel looked at her, then at me, then at the floor. "It's only for a little while," he said. "That is not what I asked you." He ran a hand through his hair. "Things have been really tight. We lost the apartment lease when I didn't get the promotion, and we just needed somewhere to land. I still have the key from before. You were supposed to return that key 2 years ago," I said. "Mom, can we not do this tonight? We just got everyone settled and the kids are tired." "Daniel." I waited until he looked at me. "You let yourself into my home. You moved your wife's family in without my knowledge. You emptied my closet. You moved my things." I paused. "You moved your father's chair." His jaw tightened. Rachel made a small sound in the kitchen that might have been a laugh. "You can have the guest room for tonight," I said. "Tomorrow morning, we are going to sit down, just the 2 of us, and discuss what happens next. But Rachel's sister and her children cannot stay here. They are not family, and this is not a hotel. That needs to be handled tonight." Rachel stepped fully into the room. "Excuse me? Those are my family." "You are welcome to make other arrangements for them," I said. "I mean no offense to your sister, but she was not invited into my home, and I don't know her, and I am not comfortable with strangers sleeping under my roof." "This is unbelievable," Rachel said. She turned to Daniel. "Are you going to let her talk to me like that?" Daniel said nothing. "That is the second time tonight I've noticed you going quiet when you should be speaking," I said to him. "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." I picked up my bag from where I had left it by the front door, went upstairs, and slept in the guest room with the door locked. In the morning, I came downstairs to find Rachel's sister still there, her children already loud in the living room, cartoons on at high volume. Rachel was at my stove making eggs in my cast iron skillet, and the easy familiarity of the gesture, the way she moved through my kitchen as though she had always moved through it, told me everything I needed to know about how she had spent the 10 days before I arrived home. Daniel was at the kitchen table with his coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Sit down, Mom," he said. "I'd rather stand." "Rachel found something," he said. He said it carefully, in the tone of someone who has rehearsed the sentence. "When she was looking through the filing cabinet for the insurance documents, for the car, we needed the registration. You went through my filing cabinet. The car is in both our names technically, and we needed." "Daniel," she found some paperwork. He reached across the table and pushed a manila folder toward me. I opened it. Inside were documents I did not recognize. My name was on them. My signature was on them. But I had never signed them. A transfer of power of attorney, dated 14 months ago, designating Rachel as my legal agent for financial and property decisions, and beneath it, a letter to my bank, also bearing my signature, authorizing Rachel's name to be added to my primary account. I set the folder down. I looked at my son. "I did not sign these," I said. "Mom." He said it gently, which was worse than if he'd said it sharply. "Rachel's worried about you. We both are. You've been alone a long time, and your memory, my memory is perfectly fine. You forgot Donna's birthday last year. I was in the hospital with a kidney stone. I sent flowers when I got out." I closed the folder. "I did not sign these documents. Look at that signature. Look at it carefully. You know my handwriting." He didn't look at the folder. Rachel came to stand in the doorway of the kitchen, spatula still in hand, watching. "She had these made," I said, not loudly. I wanted to be absolutely certain of what I was saying before I said it. "Someone prepared these documents and forged my signature, and you brought them to me, which means either you were shown them before today, or you found them this morning and decided the correct response was to confront me rather than call me. We're not confronting you. You had 10 days in my house before I came home," I said. 10 days unsupervised. You went through my files." Daniel stood up. "Mom, Rachel has been trying to help. Help with what? Help herself to my kitchen, my bedroom, my bank account?" I picked up the folder. "I am going to make some phone calls." I went upstairs. I locked the door. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and breathed for a moment. Then I called Donna. She was at my door within 15 minutes, and I met her on the porch so we could speak privately. She confirmed what she had seen all week: the cars, the lights, voices at hours that made no sense. She had photographed the truck in my driveway with her phone on 3 separate occasions. "I didn't want to call the police without talking to you," she said. I kept hoping there was an explanation. "There is an explanation," I said. "I just don't like it." I called my bank next. I reached the fraud department and explained that documents had been prepared in my name without my knowledge or consent. The representative put a hold on any changes to my account, flagged the incoming POA document that had apparently been submitted but not yet processed, and told me to come in person with my ID. I said I would be there within the hour. Then I sat at the small desk in the guest room and looked at the forged signature for a long time. Walter had teased me for years about my handwriting, said it looked like a doctor's prescription crossed with a music teacher's attendance sheet. It was distinctive, and it was mine, and whoever had forged it had done a competent job but not a perfect one. The loop on the capital M was wrong. Walter had pointed that out to me once, years ago, that the loop was the thing that made my signature uniquely mine. The loop was wrong. I took a photograph of the document on my phone, and then I went downstairs. Rachel was still in the kitchen. Daniel was sitting at the table and looked up when I came in. "I'm going out for a few hours," I said. "Mom, can we please I will be back this afternoon," I said. "Please see to it that your sister-in-law makes arrangements to be somewhere else by the time I return. I'm asking nicely, and I'm only going to ask once." I left. The bank was 15 minutes away. The branch manager was a man named Gerald who had processed my account for 8 years and knew me by name. I sat across from him and explained everything clearly: the unauthorized entry to my home, the forged power of attorney, the attempt to add a name to my account without my consent. He listened without interrupting. He had the kind of face that didn't show alarm, but I could see it in how his pen went still. He pulled up my account on his computer and turned the screen so I could see it. There had been an inquiry. 3 days ago, someone had called the bank's customer service line and provided my social security number, my date of birth, and my mother's maiden name, and had attempted to change the mailing address on my account to an address I didn't recognize. The representative on the line had required a secondary verification that the caller couldn't provide, so the change hadn't gone through. But it had been attempted. Gerald printed a full account history and the record of the attempted change. He added a security password to my account and told me no changes could be made without it. He asked if I wanted to involve law enforcement. I said not yet, but I wanted documentation. He gave me everything I asked for, slid it into a folder, and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, whatever's happening, you're on top of it." From the bank, I drove to an attorney's office. I had not planned this part, but when I passed the shingle on Meridian Street, the name of a woman my former colleague Linda had mentioned as being exceptionally good at exactly this kind of thing, I pulled into the parking lot. Her name was Patricia Oakes. She had short silver hair and reading glasses on a beaded chain, and she listened to me for 30 minutes without saying a word except to occasionally ask me to repeat a date or a detail. When I finished, she looked at the folder I had assembled, the forged POA, the bank's record of the attempted address change, the photographs Donna had sent me. "The power of attorney document is not yet filed with the county," she said, "which means they haven't fully executed whatever plan this is. That's fortunate. It gives us time to move first." She outlined what she called a corrective and protective strategy. First, we would file a declaration with the county probate court, establishing my full legal competency and disavowing the forged POA. Second, we would submit a police report documenting the forgery and the attempted account fraud. Third, she would send a formal notice to my home, addressed to all unauthorized occupants, establishing my intent to reclaim sole possession of the property and giving a legal window to vacate. Fourth, she would begin the process of having my locks changed and documenting all damage to the property. "As for your son," she said, setting down her pen, "I want you to think carefully about this. Once we file, the dynamic will change. These things have a way of not going back." "He stood in my kitchen this morning," I said, and implied that my memory was failing as a way of explaining why I wouldn't remember signing documents I never signed. "My husband's chair is in the corner of my living room, so a portable crib could sit in the middle of the floor. I think the dynamic has already changed." She held my gaze for a moment. Then she picked up her pen again. I signed the retainer agreement and drove home. When I turned onto Clifton Avenue, the silver sedan with the cracked taillight was still in my driveway. I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and considered my options. Patricia had advised patience. One more night. Let the paperwork begin its work before any confrontation. I had agreed to that in her office. But I had also agreed to something with myself. In the guest room that morning, sitting on the edge of the bed with the forged folder in my hands. I would not perform equanimity I didn't feel. I would not smile softly and say it was fine when it wasn't fine. I had done that in my life when I was younger. In the hospital, when difficult families spoke to nurses as though we were furniture. In the early years of my marriage, when I swallowed things I should have said. In the years after Walter died, when people treated my grief as an inconvenience that had gone on long enough. I was 67 years old. I had 32 years of nursing behind me and 11 years of widowhood, and I had planted every rose bush on this property with my own hands in ground that was still cold, in March, because doing it kept me from falling apart. I was done performing equanimity. I got out of the car. Rachel's sister opened the door before I knocked, which told me she had been watching from the window. "She said you'd be back soon," she said. "I live here," I said, and walked past her. Rachel and Daniel were both in the living room. Rachel looked up from her phone with an expression that had moved past pretense into something more openly antagonistic, as though the morning's conversation had calcified into a position she had decided to hold. "I gave you the courtesy of a morning," I said. "Your sister is still here." "She's leaving tomorrow," Rachel said. "She's leaving today," I said. I was clear about that, and I meant it. I looked at Daniel. I went to the bank. I spoke with the branch manager. He showed me that someone attempted to change my account's mailing address 3 days ago. They had my social security number, my date of birth, my mother's maiden name. I paused. They didn't have my security password, which is why they failed. Daniel's face had gone very still. "I also retained an attorney this morning," I said. "Patricia Oakes. If that name means anything to you, good. If it doesn't, it will." I set my purse on the table by the door, the way I always set it when I came home, and the small normalcy of that gesture helped me stay level. I am not going to stand here and catalog everything that is wrong with what has happened in this house in the last 10 days. Because I have a folder full of documents that will do that more accurately than I could. What I am going to tell you is this. I looked at my son. I know you were not the one who forged those documents. I said, I know your handwriting, and I know your character, and I do not believe you sat down and practiced my signature. But I also know that you came to this house. You let yourself in with a key you should have returned. You stayed 10 days, and at no point did you call me. You knew. You may not have known every detail, but you knew more than you told me this morning, and you stood in that kitchen and suggested my memory was failing, and I will not forget that. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Whatever Rachel's plan was with those documents, I said, it is over. The bank has a security hold. The POA has not been filed, and my attorney has already begun the process of making sure it never is. If there are other documents I haven't found yet, I suggest you tell me now, because a forensic review of my files is going to find them regardless. Rachel stood up. This is insane. You're treating us like criminals. Someone forged my signature on a legal document and tried to change my bank account address, I said. I'm treating that with the seriousness it deserves. It wasn't, she stopped. The room was very quiet. It wasn't what? I said. Her jaw tightened. She sat back down. I went upstairs and changed out of my traveling clothes. When I came back down, Rachel's sister was in the kitchen quietly packing her family's things. Her children subdued and close to her, the way children get when they sense something is wrong with the adults. I felt badly for the children. They were not responsible for any of this. I went to the kitchen and spoke gently to them, told them I hoped they had fun staying in a new city. And I meant it. The older one, a girl about 8, looked up at me with cautious eyes. Are we in trouble? She whispered. No, I said. Not at all. They left an hour later. I stood on the porch and watched the silver sedan with the cracked taillight back out of my driveway. And then I went inside and stood in the living room and looked at what needed to be put back. Walter's chair first. I moved it back to its place by the window and pressed my hand once against the backrest. Then I began reassembling the mantel. The photographs returned in the order I had always kept them. Walter and I on our wedding day in the center, the others arranged by memory. The candles I moved to the hall table. The wax on the shelf I addressed with a butter knife and a cloth. Daniel appeared in the doorway. She found the blank forms online, he said quietly. She had a friend fill them out. She said, it was just in case you got worse, in case you needed someone to manage things. He paused. She said she was doing it for your benefit. Your father managed his own affairs until 3 days before he died, I said. I will manage mine until I cannot, and when that day comes, I will make those arrangements myself. With an attorney, not with a form your wife found online and had forged. I know. You should have told her no, I said, the moment she proposed it. That should have been the end of it. I know that too. I finished straightening the mantel. I looked at the photograph of Daniel at 6 years old, small and serious in his baseball uniform, a smear of red clay on his knee. I love you, I said, because it was true and it didn't change what had happened, and both of those things could be true at the same time. But I cannot trust you right now, and I need you to understand that and not treat it as something to be smoothed over or forgiven quickly, because it isn't. He nodded. His eyes were red. You and Rachel need to find somewhere to stay, I said. My attorney will be sending a formal notice of vacate within the next 48 hours. I'm telling you now so it isn't a surprise. I would appreciate it if you handled this quietly and without drama, for both our sakes. He left the room. The police report took 2 hours the next morning. The officer who took my statement was thorough and patient, and I provided everything: the forged document, the bank records, the timeline of events. He told me the forgery aspect would be passed to a detective in financial crimes and that I would likely be contacted within the week. Daniel and Rachel were gone by Friday. They had packed quietly, which I credited to Daniel, and the house returned to its ordinary silence in stages, the way a room comes back to itself after a noise has passed through it. Donna came by that evening with soup, and her particular brand of forthright comfort. "How are you actually doing?" she asked, while I set bowls on the table. "I am angry," I said, "and sad. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise." I sat down. "But I am not shattered. That is the most important part." She looked at me over her soup. "No, you are not shattered." In the weeks that followed, the locksmith replaced every lock in the house, and I kept all 3 keys myself. The bank lifted its hold once Patricia confirmed the POA had been formally disavowed, and the attempted address change was logged as part of the police report. The detective called me on a Tuesday afternoon and informed me that the friend Rachel had used to prepare the forged documents had given a statement, and that charges were being considered. He was careful not to promise anything. I was careful not to expect too much. Rachel called me once, from a number I didn't recognize, which told me she knew I wouldn't pick up if I saw her name. "I just want you to know," she said, when I answered and she realized I had, "that it was never about hurting you." I thought about that for a moment. "You forged my signature," I said. "You moved into my home without my permission. You tried to change my bank account. Whatever you intended, Rachel. The things you did were harmful. Those are not separate." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Daniel misses you. He can call me himself," I said. "He knows my number." He did call, 3 weeks later. It was a short conversation, careful and tentative on both ends, like 2 people testing ice they aren't sure will hold. He apologized. He didn't make excuses. He didn't explain Rachel's reasons or defend his own silence. He just said he was sorry and that he hoped, eventually, we could find our way back to something. I told him I hoped so too. I was not sure I believed it yet, but it was true that I hoped it, and that was somewhere to start. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea while the October light went long and golden across the garden. The roses had gone over for the season, their hips reddening at the tips, the canes already hardening toward winter. I had planted 9 of them the spring after Walter died, 1 for every year of the decade we had planned to celebrate and hadn't gotten to, and every year I pruned them back in November, and every spring they came back fuller than before. I thought about the filing cabinet in my home office and made a mental note to have Patricia review all my documents, the will, the property deed, the retirement accounts, every piece of paper that bore my name and my future. Not because I expected another attack, but because I understood now what I perhaps should have understood earlier, that protection was not paranoia. It was maintenance. It was the same discipline I had applied to the roses and the roof and the refinished floors, the quiet, ongoing work of keeping what you had built from being undone. I thought about Walter's chair by the window, and the photograph on the mantel, and the cast-iron skillet back in its proper place on the stove. I thought about Rachel's sister's child, the girl with the cautious eyes. Are we in trouble? She had asked it with such seriousness for someone so young, as though she had already learned that trouble was a thing that arrived in the middle of ordinary moments, and it was wise to watch for it. No, I had told her, not at all. I thought she had believed me. I thought she had been right to. The light faded across the garden, and the first star appeared over the neighbor's roofline, and I stayed where I was, on my porch, in my chair, with my tea, in the home I had made and kept and defended, and I let the evening do what evenings do. There are women who are underestimated every day, underestimated for their age, for their quiet, for the patience they have learned to carry, for the way they sometimes absorb harm without visible damage, because they have survived enough harm to know how. I have been that woman. I have sat in that silence. I have smoothed over things I should have addressed and forgiven things before the apology had been given, because I was tired, and because I loved the person, and because I told myself it was easier. I was 67 years old, and I had learned, at some cost, that easier and better were not the same thing. The porch light came on automatically at dusk, the way I had set it to, and it lit the top step and the path down to the garden, steady and clear. I left it on until I was ready to go inside, and then I locked the door behind me.